Hello, hello! Today we're going to take a look at Warhammer 40k Conquest, the card game from Fantasy Flight Games. I don't know, I feel like whenever I talk about a Warhammer game, I need to be manlier because of the theme. Even though, like, playing the game is, like, exactly the opposite of manly. But anyways, this is another living card game in Fantasy Flight's line of living card games. This one is probably the closest that I've personally played to, say, Magic the Gathering, a traditional, quote-unquote, collectible card game, although I will say I've only played 4 of the LCGs. This one, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, and Netrunner. But this is in the Warhammer 40k universe, which is the futuristic sci-fi version of the original Warhammer universe, which has its own LCG with Warhammer Invasion. If you don't know about the theme of Warhammer 40k, it takes place in the very, very far future. There are humans there are space marines, and they're trying to battle against dark alien forces, which a lot of them are sort of representations of the fantasy races, like the Eldar are elves, and there are orcs that are orcs with a K instead of a C, that type of thing. So the gameplay itself is all about domination of different planets. There are planet cards out on the table. You're trying to gain control of those planets, and when you get 3 planets that have matching symbols on them, you're going to win the game. Or if you take out your opponent's warlord completely, you'll also win the game, but there's even a possibility of having ties in this game, which makes it a little bit interesting. So I would actually say that this game, as opposed to the other LCGs that I've played, is more like Magic the Gathering mixed with Smash up to a degree. You'll see what I mean in the overview. Let's go ahead and take that brief overview, and then we're going to come back and I'll let you know what I think. Okay, I'm going to give you a very brief overview of Warhammer 40k Conquest, and the reason I say brief is because I really don't want to go over every single card that comes in the core box. That would take quite a while. I'm just going to give you a taste of how the game is going to play, and then hopefully you can seek out more information about it from there. I just want to give you a little taste there. And this is a competitive game for only 2 players. Perhaps in future expansions you'll be able to play with more players. And it all takes place in the Warhammer 40k universe. So you'll take control of different factions from that universe, although with only the core set, you have to mix the factions either with each other or with neutral cards. There's not enough cards, I believe, in order to make just one deck out of one faction's cards. So what they recommend in the book is starting with the Orc faction and with the Space Marine faction, and this is kind of the setup I have here. Now, the whole point of this game is to take control of planets. You're going to have this row of planets out here in the center row. I know it's kind of hard to see because I clipped off some of them, but there's 7 planets here, and you'll have 5 planets flipped face up in the beginning, and 2 planets that are face down that you have no idea what they are. And there's actually 10 planets, I believe, in the base box. The other 3 are put back in the box without looking at them. You'll set them out here like this, and whichever one is to the furthest of the right, depending on who's facing where, is going to get the first planet token, signifying that that is the first planet in the row. You're vying for control of these planets, and there's 2 ways to win. One is to take control of 3 planets that have at least one similar symbol on them. Now, up here in the top corner of all these cards are all of these different symbols representing, I guess, things that this planet is known for? I'm not quite sure, but if you can match up 3 of these symbols on 3 planets that you have control of in your display area, you will win the game right away. The other way is to take out your opponent's warlord. Each player starts with a warlord in play from one of the factions that they're playing as. If you cannot, warlords start on what they call the hail side, where they have a special ability, but they may be wounded in combat, in which case they lose their special ability. And then if they take damage, enough damage again, their attack and damage being down here in the bottom corner, enough hit points of damage, then they're dead, and then the other player wins immediately. So try not to let that happen. So once you have your face-up planets and you have your starting deck, you'll shuffle up your deck of cards. You have a little cheat sheet card here. This is the first player token. You'll leave your warlord face-up in front of you in what's called your headquarters and your display. All these tokens represent either wounds or resources. Resources are just generic, so there's no particular resource, that's just what they are. You also have a small deck of cards representing tokens, so if there's ever any card that makes you bring out, for example, Snotlings, you'll just grab one of those cards and put it out. Think of it as the token monsters from Magic the Gathering, which is not the first comparison you'll probably hear me make during the course of the rest of this video. But in any event, once you have that all set up, then the game is going to begin. You're going to go into the normal phases of gameplay. Now, the first thing you have the opportunity to do is your deployment phase. Starting with the first player and going back and forth, each player has the opportunity to deploy some of their forces from their deck. Your starting hand is actually going to be made up of whatever it says on the bottom of your Warlord card. So here it says starting hand of 7 cards, and then the other number is your starting resources. And actually, I should be on that was the L side, never mind. So you'll take that many resources, you'll take that, which is going to be your currency, which you use to actually deploy your cards as well. So you're going to look at the card, and up in the top corner, it's going to tell you what it costs to actually put that card into play. So this one, it just takes 1 resource, and then underneath it will say it's an army card. If it's an army card, that means you can deploy it to one of the planets that's out on the board. So you'll spend a resource, put it back in the bank, put it on whatever planet that you want. Now, each of these cards, much like your Warlord, has an attack rating and a health rating and special abilities. This is one of the Orc cards, the Goth Boys, Warrior, Boys, Ally. This unit gains +3 attack while it is at the first planet. That's why its attack is 0 here. But if you put it over on the first planet, like that, it will have +3 attack. But you're not doing any of the attacking yet. You're just still deploying all of your, having the option at least of deploying all of your stuff. You also have support cards like this Prometheus Mine, which will give you more resources. When you play support cards, you're going to put them down by your headquarters next to your Warlord, but you deploy them the same way you would the other cards. You also have event cards, which you can play whenever they apply. This one says only during a battle. Combat action, each Orc unit, that's the symbol for Orcs, unit you control gets +2 attack until the end of the battle. There's attachment cards as well, which are like equipment or enchantments from Magic. Now, one thing of note here are these little tiny little symbols over here with like little skulls. These are shield icons. During combat, you can actually discard a card that has these shield icons from your hand, but only once per damage that one of your units is taking in order to prevent that many damage, however many icons are there. I just figured I'd get that out of the way and mention that now. But anyways, you're going to go back and forth, deploying units out to the battlefield. I'm not really looking at the cards, I'm just putting them out here to give you examples. Deploying them wherever you want, really. But where they are placed is important. But you have your option of any of the face-up planets. The strategy comes in a minute and why you might want to put them in specific spots. Because next it's going to go to the command phase. Now at this point you'll have some units hopefully out on the different planets, and this is still not about battle, it's about taking control of the planets and putting sort of gaining all of the resources that it has before the battle breaks out. And that's what's on all of these planet cards. Down here in this corner is how many extra cards you would get to draw. In this case it's 0, but for this one it's 2. So if you had command of this planet, you get to draw 2 cards. And over on the opposite end it's resources. So if it was this planet, you'd gain 2 resources. And each of these has a battle effect that only happens if you win a battle there. Not in this phase, in the next phase, but just to get it out of the way. You have take 1 resource from your opponent for this if you win the battle there, and discard 1 card at random from your opponent's hand. Things like that. You can also have ones that move units around, send them back to headquarters, and so on. But this is just about command and gaining the cards and the resources in the command phase. So how you're going to do this is a little dial. On this dial, you have numbers from 1 to 5, which is going to tell you where you can put out your Warlord. So you'll secretly choose which planet you want your Warlord to go, put it face down. Once both players have decided and set and locked in, you'll flip over simultaneously and you'll move your Warlord to whatever planet that you chose. And then you're actually going to resolve the command struggle at every planet, starting from the first planet and working your way down. Now, every spot where the Warlord is by himself, with no matter how many other, if there's only 1 Warlord there, no matter how many other units are at that spot, you immediately gain command of that planet, no questions asked. Which means you'll immediately get the resources there, and then you'll move on to the next planet. If there is no Warlord there, then you're going to add up the command icons these little tiny hammer symbols that some cards have. Not every card unit has them, but some do. And whoever has a clear majority of the army hammer, the hammer icons, is going to gain command of that planet and is able to get those bonus resources and cards. If there's a tie, no one gets anything. But let's say that there are two warlords at the spot. Then it is going to be no warlord gets control of that right away. Again, you're going to have to compare command icons to make sure which one of you actually has control of that spot. Other than that, like I said, even if there's no warlords there, you're still going to resolve the command struggle. You're just adding up the icons at that point. So once you get done resolving the command struggle at each planet, getting all the applicable resources and drawn cards that are necessary, now we get into combat. This is where the forces that are at each contested planet are potentially going to fight. You resolve each planet starting with the first planet, but you only resolve battles at the first planet in particular, and then any other planet where there is at least one warlord present. And if there are planets, let's say it was this planet here where there's no warlords and it's not the first planet, nothing happens. It's nothing happens there this round. Those forces are just kind of sitting dormant. It needs to be either the first planet, which is highly contentious, or where there's warlords to sort of rile up the armies. When you get into combat, it's kind of like the deployment phase in that you're going to go back and forth, starting with whoever has the initiative at that time. The initiative is going to swing to the person who actually has a warlord at that planet. If there is no warlord at the planet, or if both warlords are there, it's whoever actually has the first initiative token. And by the way, this will pass between every round of play once you get done with all the phases. When you go into combat, it's as simple as picking one of your units that is not exhausted. Exhausted is when you are either, well, I call it tapped and untapped. I'm going to call it tapped and untapped. They can't sue me. If it's not tapped, then you're able to use it in battle. If it is tapped, then it's kind of stuck until you begin a new combat phase once both players have passed and aren't able to use any more of their units, and there's not a clear winner. Also, I should mention that when you originally deploy your warlord, at the end of a combat phase, all of your troops that were there are going to go back to headquarters with warlord. When you summon your warlord back out in a future round, the warlord goes there untapped and ready to go. Other units go there tapped with it, which means they're kind of going to have to sit out the first round of combat. When you decide to tap one of your units during the combat phase, you're going to take its damage. You're going to deal that damage to a unit of your choice on the defense side, and they take that many wound tokens. If they take too many wound tokens, enough to meet or beat their health level, it's going to go into your discard pile. I'm not saying this one would. I'm just saying, for an example, it would have died. Once one side is the only one with units there, they win the battle for that phase. They get to take that planet, do the battle effect, and put it into their display, and potentially win the game that way, as per the endgame conditions I said earlier. Now, if your warlord takes too much damage, like I said before, it's going to get bloodied and sent back to the home world, back to your headquarters. And if that person dares to put him back into combat again, and it takes, again, amount of damage equal to its bloodied side value, then it's dead for sure, and it is out of the game. But you're going to resolve all the applicable battles. You'll use your different battle effects if they apply. You can use support units again if they apply. And once every combat is resolved, then you're going to go to the headquarters phase, which is basically cleanup. You'll move your first planet token to the next planet, then reveal face-down planets. To fill up the planets that have been taken, each player gets to draw 2 cards from their deck. Because you're only drawing 2 cards, that means it can be very important to take command of planets in order to get more cards. You also gain 4 resources automatically in addition to whatever you gain during the course of the round. Ready all of your cards, and then the next player gets the initiative token. And that's it. You're going to keep going back and forth, taking control of planets, trying to match up the symbols, or taking out your opponent's warlords. That is a very brief, quick summation of Warhammer 40k Conquest. Let's go to my final thoughts. As far as what comes in the box, you get a lot of good stuff, at least as far compared to the other LCGs that I've played. There's a lot of different faction cards in this box. Like, all of the major factions are represented. The only ones that aren't are the Necrons and the Tyranids, which will be coming in future expansions, I'm sure. But if you like a particular faction, they will be in this box. Now, the trick here is that you don't have enough cards of those factions in this box in order to make like an all one faction deck. Like, you can't have a deck that is all of the Space Marines. Instead, on the back of the rulebook, there's a little chart that will show you allied forces that you will mix and match your deck with. So the Space Marines can team up with the Tau, which are one of my favorite Warhammer 40k races. And they can also team up with the Astra Militarum. The Tau can go with the Eldar, the Space Marines, and like the Chaos can go with the Dark Eldar and the Orcs, and so on. So you basically you'll mash these two decks together with some neutral cards, and you'll play. You can play with either the pre-prescribed decks they tell you to do in the rules, or you can build your own decks, because it is a living card game, which is basically like a collectible card game as well, except for the distribution method. And there will be more booster packs to come. And actually, I've heard that a lot of people buy 3 boxes of this set, because by doing so, you can have a maximum of 3 cards of a particular type in your deck. So if you buy 3 sets, you'll have 3 copies of each card. That's way past what I'm willing to do at this point, just for a review. But so please bear in mind that I only have the base box, and I've played with several different mixed and matched factions from this box. But as far as the presentation of it, I like the artwork a lot. I'm not like the biggest Warhammer 40k guy. I know that I was glowing over Space Hulk, but that was more just because of the theme in general and what the game was. I never played any of the Warhammer miniatures games. I just had a lot of luck with the board games as far as being fun, like Chaos in the Old World for Warhammer Fantasy. But I do like the art a lot. I like the whole theme of it, and there are certain factions that I like thematically more than others, and they all seem pretty cool, and they all do have thematic abilities to themselves, like the Orcs being just like taking tons of damage and just like berserker raging in there, but some of the other factions being a lot more thoughtful and strategic in how they work, like the Tau and the Space Marines even. So there is that, and it works pretty well thematically, tied together with the theme. Although I wouldn't say it is the most thematic game in the universe, but it's tough to get that across in any kind of game that is just cards with some tokens. I mean, Netrunner pulls it off, but Netrunner, this game has got to be compared to Netrunner and all the other LCGs, and Netrunner was just a completely unique experience. It made me think of games in a different way of what a card game could be by tying the theme so tightly to each and every card and where they're placed on the board. That doesn't really happen here so much. And I mentioned in my intro that the game felt like Magic the Gathering with Smash Up a bit. The reason for that is because, well, I mean, as far as the Magic the Gathering thing goes, you're essentially just attacking and trading blows and going attack against defense. Well, it's not really defense here, it's attack versus health. It's a little bit different in the respect that you exhaust a guy, deal damage, and then your opponent then you go back and forth, taking turns, dealing damage, taking damage with your unexhausted or untapped guys. And that just gives back and forth. So it's a little bit different, but it had the same feel of Magic to me. And then the Smash Up part comes in that you're trying to take control of these essentially locations in the center of the board and trying to get them to pop for your favor and taking control of them, not for points, but just to get to a certain amount of symbols on those planets, have 3 of them with matching symbols. You win the game, which is better in my opinion. You're not constantly having to keep track of points, but it still, again, has that same feel. And also, just out of the base box, you're mashing 2 races together, which is a lot like Smash Up. So, well, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that while I think that games like Netrunner and even Lord of the Rings, I didn't like Lord of the Rings, but I would say that both that and Netrunner were unique experiences for me. I didn't really play games like that before, even if they existed. They were new to me and new and fresh. Playing Conquest felt samey. It felt a lot like so many other types of card games that I've played, not just Magic and Smash Up, a lot of other LCGs. I mean, you think of Doomtown, which I reviewed recently, where you're doing poker hands, which totally was like out of my wheelhouse of what I was comfortable with, but in a good way. It was really challenging me, and it really sets itself apart, and that's why for now, Doomtown is staying in my collection. I don't know about Warhammer Conquest. I mean, it's fun. It is. I had fun playing it. But did I have more fun than any number of other card games, including Magic and Smash Up, that I played? I don't know. It's it really, I think that the people who are going to love this game the most, enough to really invest in it and keep it and play it consistently, are going to be the Warhammer fans. I think that the theme here is going to be all important, the theme and presentation, as to whether or not you're going to stick with this. Because if you're someone that just loves LCGs and CCGs in general, and you're looking for something that is just mechanically sound and is going to just keep you bringing you back and back to the table and give you that addictive euphoria that so many CCGers want. I don't know if there's enough here. I don't know if it's interesting enough. It certainly didn't scratch the same itch for me that Netrunner did. And there are some sort of wonky things about it as well. Like 2 of the games that we played actually ended up coming either tied or close to a tie, which in one sense, it's kind of unusual for any CCG to allow that to happen. So I was like, huh, that's kind of neat. In practice, however, it drags the game out too long when it gets to that point, and it feels very anticlimactic. So I don't know how common that is. I've only played this game 4 times, well, 5 times technically, but we didn't finish that game. And the games are fast. That's part of the reason why I played it so much. And it's fast, and it's not too difficult to take apart the decks and put new decks together and play like that. I didn't get too much into the deck building. I just wanted to play with and see what every faction felt like. So it's fast, but again, I've been here before. That's my problem. I really wanted when I heard it described, fighting over the planets, the theme of its planets, if I could speak, sounded much better than what it actually ended up being. So it probably sounds like I'm trashing the game, and I don't mean to. I think it's a good, solid game. It's just not revolutionary the way that I wanted it to be. But this is an LCG, and it's possible that as more factions come out that are perhaps more interesting than the factions that are here, and maybe new ways to play, more planets to choose from, because there's only 10 planets in the game. So play the game a few times, you're going in the base box. I mean, play this a few times, you're going to see all of them consistently, just in different orders. Once more stuff comes out, it may get more interesting. I don't know if I'm personally going to stick with it that long. A time will tell on that. But for now, if you love Warhammer and the idea of an LCG and CCG, definitely check this out. Hopefully you already have it. And if you're even into LCGs and CCGs, you might want to try this one. But before you make the huge investment of time and potentially money into this, you should try it first, because I think it's possible that other games like Netrunner, even potentially the other LCGs like Warhammer Invasion and Lord of the Rings, are going to be a better fit for you. Lord of the Rings is cooperative, so that may or may not work for you. But as far as unique, fresh, innovative gameplay, this is more of a workhorse LCG, CCG game than any of the other ones. But your mileage may vary. You should definitely at least give it a shot. My name is Nick. This has been Board Game Brawl, and I'm reminding you to get out there and game every day and in every way. Take care.